Well, thank you anyway for coming on to chat with me.
Of course, good to be here.
So the age-old question I'm going to lead with is, how did you come up with the concept for the Never Hike series?
Um, I always wanted to do some type of Friday the 13th fan film when I started getting into the thought of it. And I thought that, with limited resources and a small team, that it might be kind of cool to focus on not so necessarily creating these big movies that require lots of actors and lots of resources, but rather stories about like one person who, comes in contact with Jason Voorhees and then doesn't return. And so that was kind of always like the short premise of it. And there were different ideas that kind of worked into it. There were bigger ones about cross country hikers, smaller ones about like Insta vloggers, and eventually it was about two or three different short films or ideas that I had like outlined or written, and put them all together into one thing. And that's what really became Never Hike Alone.
Was it always an intention of yours to try and get some of the cast back from the movies, that is?
I didn't think it was possible. I mean, I never really kind of put it on the radar. It wasn't until our EP Barry J, met Tom Matthews and asked if he wanted to do it. And luckily, Tom saw our trailer and became interested. And then I showed him the second trailer, which nobody had seen at the time, and he signed on to the movie. So it was really, it was kind of like a real pipe dream. I thought I was going to make a fan film, and then if the fan film was good enough, I might ask, somebody in the franchise to maybe pitch in if we decided to do another one, which really wasn't on my mind at the time. It was probably just do one and done. So it was really surreal to kind of be working on it. I think we were working on it for about 8 months, and then have the notion that we could bring Tom on because of Barry stepping in as an EP and making this happen. And ever since, it's been kind of this crazy wild ride of now building up on that. And since we have alumni, it's like, why not use them and like work them into the story and like build their characters? So it's been a real blessing and challenge.
I was speaking to Tom McLaughlin a couple of
Hmm.
weeks ago. Um, on my half, I'm gutted because his audio didn't pick up.
Oh no.
Yeah, but he was saying that he had basically passed on the story of Tommy Jarvis to you.
I mean, yeah, it's fun. Tom and I have become pretty good friends. And we've met from time to time, and having Tom come back in, and not much having in the Friday the 13th world, and no one really interested in bringing Tommy Jarvis back at that time. It was really interesting to kind of weave him into our story. There was kind of like a pipe dream story that I had in my head at the beginning of the whole process, where I was like, oh, if we can get through this whole thing. And in the original version, Kyle MacLeod died. And if Kyle were to die, it would be kind of interesting to have a character come look for him. And if that character who came to look for him was his brother and then stumbled across Tommy Jarvis and asked for his help to help find what happened to his brother, I thought that would be an interesting way to kind of introduce Tom into the series, the original concept. Um, Getting him into the film with Kyle now surviving, all these different things kind of changed the way that did. And we kind of had to like rewrite his history all the way back to part six. And Tom knows that I'm a big fan of part six. It's my favorite movie in the franchise. And so I think he was really happy to hear what I kind of had in store for Tommy, some of the themes that I had come up with for what his life had become after Friday the 13th. And it was an interesting thing to put together. And then obviously, you know, Tom Matthews then introduced me to Vinny Guastafara, who plays Deputy Rick Colon in Jason Lives, and now is reprising his role as Sheriff Rick Colon. And so taking over the mantle for Sheriff Garrett, since everybody else in the police force basically got killed in that movie, and kind of having to rebuild it from scratch. And I think it's kind of cool to take these two characters over the span of about 25, 26 years, to see that their rivalry is still going on, and that the mystery of Jason Voorhees is still alive and well, and that the sort of where we retconned the series at Manhattan, kind of like instead of going towards Jason Goes to Hell and everything they did with New Line, we try to continue it as if 7 and 8 did happen. They were one-off events, and then Jason disappeared. And so ever since then, Tommy's been looking for Jason, and Rick's been trying to keep people out of Crystal Lake. And those are kind of the two, kind of what those two characters have been up to. So to have two characters that have lineage back to the old movies, it feels like it carries over. It just feels like we're starting to get some of those storylines that we always wanted to see sort of develop through films, that we never had characters really travel through films other than Tommy Jarvis, but it was always a different Tommy. It was always at a different stage in his life. And now I think it's only fitting that we're now coming to Tommy Jarvis in his twilight years, and kind of trying to bring this to rest once and for all, since, part 6 didn't necessarily do the trick.
Do you have plans to bring Megan on board, the love interest from Netflix?
Oh yeah, I mean, Jennifer Cook was definitely one of the first people I asked about. I had a really great storyline for them. It still works, but she just isn't involved because Jennifer Cook doesn't have any interest in Friday the 13th or acting. Apparently, she married into a lot of money and just doesn't need it anymore. And I think she also kind of had a big religious epiphany in her life, and kind of feel as if the Friday the 13th the Friday the 13th films are a little bit morally below her standards these days. So I don't think that she would ever really be interested. So it was something I wanted to do, but in our world, Tommy and Megan's relationship eventually fizzled out. Not because they didn't have a great connection or because of that. It came down to one simple thing: Tom couldn't let it go. Here she was in this place where her dad had been killed. She moved here from the city. This just wasn't her. This wasn't her jam to begin with. Like, she didn't know if this was going to work. She was working with her dad, but now both her parents are dead. She wants to get out of this place. You know what I mean? Get away from the bad memories. And she asked Tom to come with her, and Tommy can't leave. Tommy can't bring himself to leave this place because he feels that he has to protect it. And as you can understand, when a couple has a disagreement like this, it's, Meg couldn't stay. Meg couldn't stay and watch him destroy himself and put himself in harm's way to go, be this Jason fighter or this Jason hunter. And, she left. And so he kind of got left alone, but he still wears that guilt of waking Jason up in 6. Events that happened in part 7 and part 8, he obviously wasn't around for. But that was sort of like, I mean, how was he supposed to predict that Tina would rise Jason? You know what I mean? And then that happens all in one night, and then Jason disappears the next day. And by the time Tommy would get there, if he was working as an EMT then, he would show up the next morning. And that would be all he would get, but he wouldn't get much back. And Jason was back on the lake by that point. Same thing in part 8. Like, when Jason woke up in part 8, he got carried out of Crystal Lake. Tommy wouldn't even know about it until a few days later, when he finds out about the Lazarus sinking, and Jason's already been washed back out to sea. So I think at that point, Tommy knows that Jason's out there, or at least he believes Jason's out there, but he can't prove it. And by showcasing some of these stories, like the one we do in the Disappear music video, the one now that we do with Never Hike in the Snow, and then how Tommy reacts at the end of Never Hike Alone, is this kind of arc of his progression in trying to find Jason. And where we are in Never Hike in the Snow is, where Jason is in Disappear is that he's come back, he's hidden away. Some people have come in, he kills them, he snatches their bodies up, and he makes sure that no one can find them. And then if you're a victim in this timeline, in the Never Hike Alone timeline, you basically disappear. Same thing happens in Never Hike in the Snow. We have Mark Hill, who crosses into his territory, does something that he's not supposed to do, ends up getting killed by Jason, and disappears. Same thing with Mabry. Mabry comes in, sticks his nose where he doesn't belong, and he disappears. And each time something gets in Tommy's way in order for him to prove it. Tommy almost has him in this movie, and the cops stop him. It's a lot like Friday the 13th part 6. Again, it's him running through the graveyard trying to show them the grave, and then he gets back out there and he gets tackled before he ever makes it, and then Martin filled in the grave and lies to the cops. So every time Tommy tries to do the right thing, he doesn't have any help, because nobody wants to believe him, especially Rick, who has a big vendetta against him, because Rick feels, I guess, deep down, like if he didn't get locked in that cage, maybe he could have helped his friends. Maybe he could have seen what really went down there for his own 2 eyes, because he thinks everyone's lying for them or covering for Tommy, or they're all seeing stuff. And so he's never seen Jason. So that's another kind of side of it. It's like Rick has never had the opportunity to see Jason. So how, after all this time, can he really say that Jason exists? And when these people go missing, who is it really? Is it Jason, or is it someone else, or is it something else? And so it poses these questions about, what happens if you live in a town like this? What happens when things like this happen? And then as far as Tommy's arc on where he is in Never Hike Alone, it's a post Never Hike in the Snow world. And I think in Never Hike Alone, at the end of that film, when we see Tommy and he's a little bit less energetic about the thought of Jason being out there, I think we're going to meet him at a time where he's really starting to give up. And that's what the next episode is about, is him and his search for Jason, always coming up short and never really seeming to get what he wants. And then getting to that point where he's like, what have I done with my life? I've been here for 25 years searching for something, looking for a fight that will never happen. Like, is looking for a fight that can't be found. And so, it isn't until Kyle MacLeod stumbles into this world and upsets the balance in which has been keeping Jason safe in a way. And that's where this series really kind of picks up steam and really kind of sets off. But before we get to these bigger ideas, these larger body counts, these multiple locations, shooting in a hospital, doing all those things, we feel like we owe Tommy's character some character service. We need to see what he's been up to. We need to see what he deals with on a modern day. We need to see how much this means to him. And, we want to answer that question of how does Tommy find Kyle? It's a very simple answer. I'll just spoil that now. I'm not going to say what it is, but it's pretty simple. But it expands the bounds of how this town works. And it's a real kind of, it's kind of like oh yeah, that makes sense. But then you get to see some things in Never Hike Alone that you didn't see before. So we get to see Tommy fight Jason outside of the ambulance. We get to see a little bit more of what happens about after they drive away, because Tommy's not necessarily done with the fight. So we kind of consider this episode like the Back to the Future 2 episode of the series, where we're going to see the events happening at the same time as they were happening in Never Hike Alone, but it's all from Tommy's perspective. And once we get to that Kyle MacLeod scene, once he gets there and it gets to that moment, fans kind of know what's coming, but now they're going to start to get a little bit more context as to where Tommy's at, what happens to him, and then what that fight looks like, which that's what I'm really excited about, is making that round one Tommy versus Jason kind of a really cool moment. See how Tommy managed to survive that attack, and then get back and, have the energy to get back in that car and drive away and save Andrew's character, Kyle. And then what he does when he gets a little bit more of a tactical advantage, and how he, fights Jason like that as well. So I think it's going to be a cool kind of introduction to it. We're excited about that. The film then progresses into the next episode called Jason Takes Crystal Lake, which is going to take place mostly at the hospital, Wessex County Medical Center. Not the same exact one from Friday the 13th Part 4, but the same. It's supposed to be the same place, or maybe it's a new building. Maybe they built it since the 80s. But ultimately, they obviously have to go there because Kyle's dying. Tommy's going to be injured. And they have to figure out and come together and work as a team. The character that we established in Never Hike in the Snow, Diana Hill, plays a very important role. She was always in the Never Hike Alone 2 script. There was always a Diana Hill character who was a doctor who worked at the hospital, who helps Tommy and helps Kyle, is kind of stuck in between all their stuff. But when we wrote out Never Hike in the Snow, we came up with this backstory for her about her just moving there, having her son there. And it was like, wow, what if she just moves to Crystal Lake and her son's been missing? And then by the time we get to Never Hike again, and, Jason Takes Crystal Lake, like, she's going to be 3 months later, still living in this town, wondering what to do with herself, wondering if she can bring it upon herself to leave when her son is still technically missing. He hasn't been listed as dead yet. He hasn't been listed as deceased. They haven't found his body. So, what's going to happen to this woman? And then in the middle of this kind of this unbelievable thing that she's going through, Kyle MacLeod shows up. So what's great is that all these characters in the middle of this struggle, like even Rick's in the struggle of dealing with losing a cop, and then some of the fallout of that, and having to deal with Tommy, who looks like he's about to go crazy and snap, and the secret that he's trying to keep under wraps so he can try to keep his town safe. If he can keep everybody out of Crystal Lake area, then that means that nobody will get injured. If everybody knows to stay away, then there's no problem. If nobody goes out there, nobody dies. So Tommy keeps going out there and he keeps stirring up trouble, and eventually he feels like he's going to stir up the hornet's nest and do some damage, or he's just going to get so sick of not being able to prove that Jason exists and go above and beyond to prove that Jason exists. So there's lots of cool storylines that are coming up and that will play out through that episode and really come to a head. But the most fun part about it is Jason coming into town, and for the first time since kind of part two-ish, not two, but more 3 and 4. Like when he comes into the country store and he goes to Higgins Haven and he goes to the Jarvis house, and even when he's at Wessex County Medical and he has to work his way back, killing people throughout the town, whoever he comes into contact with, but ultimately getting to Wessex County and having a real like Friday the 13th of part 4, the final chapter, meets Halloween 2, meets a little bit of Friday the 13th part 5 with a little bit of stuff at the end, and having a lot of fun in that environment. And then taking that, a lot of people die in that movie, and then whoever survives, there's a little small group. They end up traveling back to Camp Crystal Lake in the last episode, which is the final hike. And they go back to Crystal Lake to take Jason on once and for all, and armed hopefully with this new knowledge that they think that they know how to defeat Jason now, but we'll see if it works or not, or if they're just going to end up all dead too. So it's kind of really like, so it felt good to really take Tom and give him a grand scale thing. Like he's been trying to solve this mystery of Jason, and his key to the kingdom is Kyle MacLeod, which I think really makes Never Hike Alone special when you watch that story and you realize how important it is for Kyle to get out. But then as Kyle gets out, he's stepping into a brand new story. And that's what this miniseries is. It's this story that he didn't realize was going on long before he probably even existed. You know what I mean? In the early 80s, this all started, and it's been, multiplying ever since. And in stumbles this guy who doesn't know what's going on, and he upsets the balance of this entire town and this curse. And lo and behold, here's this guy who's been waiting for an answer on to how is he going to solve this problem. And these two have to come together, get to know each other, and work together to ultimately solve Tommy's greatest, lifelong mission, which is destroy Jason Voorhees.
So after you've done with this the Never Hike Alone story, will the final one, Never Hike Again, will it round off your whole story?
Yeah, the final hike rounds off the entire story. And so that's really from, this chapter of it. There's other chapters of, I think, this story that could go further back. I could keep going backwards and telling stories about, how Jason came back from Manhattan. I have another story that I want to do about that period between parts 1 and 2, about Jason surviving in the wilderness. Is there other people that he came into contact with in that time? And were there any things that led us to believe in that period of time that Jason was a little bit more than human? That, in our world, Jason didn't survive. He died in that lake. I mean, it's a little boy. He drowned in the lake, and in 1957, he died. And for 20 years, his mom held onto that grief, ended up coming back and killing people. And the night that she died, that's when he came back, sort of like the loose tale that Paul tells in part 2. And so we wanted to treat it like a revenant. We wanted to treat it like a supernatural coming back from the dead to avenge another death. In some way, the transfer of one life from Pamela into Jason somehow brought him back so he could be that living embodiment of the curse, what had become this supernatural kind of connection between the two. There's also Pamela's story. And I think that the supernatural connection really starts there. It starts with, and you look at part 1 and you see Pamela talking to a child that's not there. Why is that going on? You could either say it's PTSD or she's lost her mind, or you could go into the supernatural realm and that Jason is talking to her from beyond, or that there's something in terms of a death curse manipulating her and using the death of her son and the grief and the anger that she feels for a lifelong of being discriminated against, pushed out, and considered an outsider. And when they finally take it's the last straw. They took her son, the only person she had in this entire world, and she starts to kind of lose it. It becomes this great kind of unraveling of a character. And we feel that our Never Hike series is really great. And then these other kind of 3 prequels that we want to do also fill in some gaps on not only Jason, but also Pamela, and then also the camp itself, because we really want to start to emphasize that there's something about the camp, and there's something about the land, and there's something about the lake, and it's just always been weird or evil or cursed. And you could even think about it even before Wessex County was established or Crystal Lake was established, that when it was just the natives living there, that even they kind of had this thing about this place that, you know, it was very beautiful, but it seemed to turn people against each other. There was something about it. It's something about that anytime people came around it, it had a way of manipulating people, or people would start to get greedy, or people would start to get jealous, and it would really make us, you know, vengeful and just awful people. I think that's kind of a cool thing to explore. It kind of puts it in a cool context, gives it a supernatural vibe, kind of plays off of the vibes that Tom McLaughlin was setting up in part 6 with, you know, him, you know, one line that I really love that I think, you know, like, with all the things that are confusing in Friday the 13th, Tom McLaughlin came up with a really great line, which was, we have to return Jason to the place where he originally died. You know, it was using logic of, okay, if we're going to use supernatural kind of bounds to start to defeat this character, like what's a great way to do it? And saying that you got to lock Jason in the lake was a really cool way of doing it. But, you know, and I want to expand on that. Our idea is not to do the same exact thing that part 6 did by the end. It's just to stick him back in the lake. Tommy has a new idea. Tommy realizes that the idea before wasn't necessarily something that would kill Jason. It would just trap Jason. But as he can see, Jason doesn't stay trapped forever. So how do we go beyond? What is the source of all of this power type thing? And so Tommy's been in search for, like, what would be kind of the secret to Jason, how he is able to, why he is here, and how he is able to maintain this ability to never die.
You mentioned earlier about Sheriff Rick.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have the scene planned for when Sheriff Rick first lays eyes on Jason?
Oh, it's a good one too. That happens it eventually happens in the Jason Takes Crystal Lake one. It's really great. Vin's character and Rick's character really takes this, like, nice side B plot journey, as the whole, like, you know, everything's just falling apart in the town. People are showing up dead everywhere. He can't solve, you know, this is his worst nightmare. This is what he never wanted. And as bodies start to pile up, it's not necessarily that he's going to think Jason's doing it. Like, his mind, he thinks that Tommy snapped. And so he's going to be looking for Tommy. So you have Tommy trying to look for answers at the hospital. And then you got Rick out in town and all over the place looking for him. So it makes Tommy's job to get this information out of this, you know, hiking vlogger who's barely conscious. You know, it's going to make it really tough. And I think that that's what really makes this cool, is that this isn't just like an A to B storyline where, you know, it's just easy. Like, they get back, they figure it out, and then they go. There's going to be a lot of things standing between them. And I think that's when I make it a really compelling story. It really comes down to the relationships between the characters. You know, Diana's character is going to get caught between everybody, because how does she know who's telling the truth? You know what I mean? Like, if the police are saying one thing and Tommy's saying another, you know, really the deciding factor is Kyle. But at the same time, Kyle is going to be sort of incapacitated for part of these scenes. So it's going to be interesting for us to kind of play with these characters and see them work with and against each other, and how they're eventually going to have to all get along. But I mean, really the thing that brings everybody together is once Jason really shows up, and, you know, he's not hiding himself anymore, and he's not, you know, playing hide and seek. He's just coming at everybody like a freight train and taking out as many people as he can along the way. So it's going to be a real wake up call for Rick at that point. But, you know, up until then, he's going to be a real pain in Tommy's ass.
No change there.
Nope, no. But I mean, that's what the fans want. They want that. They want that rivalry. That's the, you know, the Garrus, Rick, and Tommy and Jason Lives was a great rivalry. It was a great 1-2 punch between the two sides, the police and the vigilante. And it's something that I think thematically worked. It was something that worked within the bounds of a Friday the 13th, and I think it can work again.
If you're going to be doing sort of like a Jason in the town segment of killing people, are you going to maybe sort of take the Halloween sort of route and do the one shot sort of thing?
Yeah. Not so. We're going to do some stuff like that. There is a one shot later on in the movie. My inspiration behind the things that I want to do with Jason when there's multiple characters dying at the same time is actually looking at films like The Raid. and designing action sequences that carry like 1, 2, 3. It might not necessarily be a long drawn out sequence, but there's going to be 3 impact stunts right away with some camera choreography and then some really clever cuts. So we're going to try to keep that type of energy up, so the energy is always high. It's not necessarily Jason walking around and killing unaware people. There's going to be moments where Jason walks into like a group of people and just starts going, you know what I mean? And I think it's going to be fun. We're going to make that a really fun entry. You know, we've been taking it really seriously and we want to do that for a little bit, but once we've earned our kind of character cards for everybody, then it's going to start to lighten up a little bit. Then we're going to have our fun. We're going to start to kill people. We're going to come up with interesting ways for Jason to make people die. You know, I got a good handful of them already that, you know, they're just, some of them are just brutal and some of them are just laugh out loud in a weird, interesting way. You know, we really want to design our deaths to a certain degree. And that's why, you know, we wanted to prove ourselves with Never Hike in the Snow. We designed Mark's death, which has been something that's been on my mind since 2016. And then towards like in the middle of production, we came up with, you know, Mabry's demise and trying to figure that out, which is fun. It's like when you're working with professionals, you say, hi, you know, how do you blow up someone's head? And they say, okay, let's go put those pieces together and go get all those materials. And then, you know, a couple months later, you got a head that's ready to explode on your set. So it's a really cool process to try to figure this stuff out. And that's what we're working on right now. I'm working on the next episode. There's some ideas that I kind of came up with based on Never Hike in the Snow, based on some audience reactions and things like that. And I think we're just putting people in a context of where things are, where they are in the story. So I'm going to go in and do like a little bit of a rewrite just to make sure things are very clear, and to keep the action level up. And that way, when we get to the moment that we all really want to get to, fans will like, basically the next episode is going to fill us up all the way up for everything that's the fun stuff. All the body count stuff, all that stuff will be afterwards, but we'll have all of our characters developed. We're still going to have fun with Jason. The body count will go up in the next film. There'll be more than just 2 deaths. I can guarantee you that. You know, we know we're going to watch Axel and Denny get it on screen this time, but there are other characters who will get it as well. And there'll be some other cool things too, some other things that we're developing that we'll see. I don't want to give anything away, but there's that would be really interesting. I think fans are gonna like what we're up to.
You see, when you were figuring everything out about starting the Never Hike franchise, how did you create your Jason?
It was a series of trial and error. It started out very much looking like a part 3, part 4 Jason. And I'm kind of slender. I'm not really a big hulking dude. I'm tall. I'm 6'3". You know, I'm pretty big. I'm an athlete, but I'm not like overbearing. So when I wore just the shirt and I wore just the pants, I kind of looked kind of scrawny. And so I always kind of gave the jacket look critiques. I was always like, I like it. It's an idea, but I don't feel like it's in the right realm yet. And what I wanted to do with the jacket was basically take the concept of the Sears work shirt and just build it up a little bit. And during research, I found the M65 military jacket. And we just kind of stripped it of all the bells and whistles, all the straps, all the hoods, all the zippers, all the buttons, all that stuff, and kind of ripped everything off of it and kind of tore it down to make it look almost like a bulky Sears work shirt, and then just leave it open. And from there, it was just about kind of mixing and matching different things with it, putting the Henley underneath it. Like, you know, Freddy versus Jason, he had the big sweater. It was really puffy and it was underneath it, but we came up with something a little bit more thin. That way it just kind of, it was just something good and neutral to sit on. So it was the green on top of the neutral gray and then the brown pant. And what worked out for us when we kind of put this combination together was that when we ended up scouting our camp that we shot at, everything was very much green and brown. And so Jason had the same type of production design that our camp did. And that felt good. It felt like it was in the right world and it looked good. When it came for the mask, I was going off of actual canon. So all masks at this point had been destroyed. There are no original masks available. There is no mask with an axe cut in it. That was either confiscated in part 4 or it was or it was destroyed in part 7, and then the one in part 8 was destroyed. So this is a mask that he took from the camp. And I always just kind of assume that, in the years that they tried to reopen camp in 62 and 67, they could have tried to reopen a winter camp at some point too. And there was winter equipment there. And so he could have just pulled something out. And that's what he ends up, Mabry ends up stumbling across in Never Hike in the Snow. We wanted to kind of tip our cap to the fact that there could be winter gear at Camp Crystal Lake, since they do have, winters, and they do have a lake. You can go out there and play hockey. And we actually developed a whole story off the whole Ghost Hawk and Ghost Look character. It's called, that's the story about him coming back from Manhattan, which is called The Defeated. So this is a defeated Jason who has gotten his ass kicked for the 6th time, 2, 3, 4, and then 6, 7, 8. And, he's come back, his costume has been melted, his skin has been melted, he's been almost completely destroyed, he's barely hanging together. And it just so happens that he finds someone living in his camp. It's like Goldilocks with Jason. It's like really cool. And ultimately what the story is really about is this drifter who's wandered into Crystal Lake looking for work, no place to live, a veteran of foreign wars, dealing with some baggage, just looking to start a new life. Ends up getting work on a farm, and while looking for a place to stay, since no one has any availability in Crystal Lake, ends up staying in the forest, and then stumbles across Crystal Lake. Ends up taking up living quarters in the camp in one of the cabins by the water, and makes a decent life for himself. Goes to work, makes a little bit of cash, comes back, fixes up his cabin a little bit, back and forth for maybe a month or two. In the meantime, this is maybe a week or so after the Lazarus has sank. So the town is kind of uneasy, and they're not talking about what just happened, and people really aren't talking about it. But a couple of months go by and things seem to be okay. It's like there's no big uproar, there's no mass killings. Maybe it was just a ship sinking. And eventually Jason returns. And what happens to this character is something we've never seen in a Friday the 13th film before. We start to see the camp show its powers, and we start to see the camp show itself as a supernatural entity. And we see how it almost protects and takes care of Jason in a way. And so as Jason returns, he ends up kind of leading this character on a very inward journey that reveals this character's past and what he's done and what he's trying to run from, and ultimately finds his fate at the hand of Jason Voorhees. And by the end of the film, you realize that the whole time he's been wearing the Ghost Jason costume, and Ghost Jason takes it from him Terminator style, and then returns to the lake to heal. And we really wanted to kind of tell that story. We want an opportunity to tell that story and show how this could have happened, how this logically could have played out in using Friday the 13th logic, and just kind of expand upon the characters. See Jason in a form that we've never seen him before. I mean, almost completely naked, but in a sense that like Tarman is completely naked. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like all the rags, the ribs, it's skin and bones. He's not what he was. And so when people see me and they see like, why is Jason so skinny? They're going to understand what's under the Ghost Jason costume. Even though he's somewhat regenerated since that time, he's really kind of falling apart. I mean, he's old. He's 70 years old. You know what I mean? And he's a corpse. And he just can't die. It's not his fault, but he's just got to deal with what he's going to deal with. But we thought it would be kind of cool to approach that, like, even though he's still powerful, but he is kind of, he's taken a beating over these last, 40 years.
See, going into the series, did you expect it to be as successful as it is?
Not at all. I mean, I really thought I thought like it would do well. I thought it would do well on YouTube. I thought people would take notice to it. People take notice to Friday the 13th fan films, and ones that had been made in 2010, 2011 had managed to get a few million views on it over that time. And I thought, hey, if we do this good enough, a few years go by, enough people might watch it on Friday the 13th. Or if, we can get it into the ether while people are going to see other Friday the 13th, maybe they'll kind of get onto it. Maybe we could do a screening of it here or there, get it into a convention or a festival. That'd be real fun. Never in my wildest dreams did I think that I was going to do a 2-year tour with it, and basically go to almost every state here in the U.S. We saw it go all the way all over the world. We translated it into, I think, like 6 or 7 languages now. I've had the opportunity to meet alumni like Tom McLaughlin and all these different people. I got to design a kill for the Friday the 13th game. Kyle and I ended up in the Friday the 13th mobile puzzle game, and Ghost Jason and Kyle McLeod, which is really cool. If you actually want to kill Kyle, you can kill him in that game, which is real nice. And all these opportunities that I've had, it never really kind of saw it doing what it did. It was always supposed to be a showpiece, say like, hey, I think I can direct, and this would be like a nice showpiece to show you what I can do. And since then, it's become much more than that. It's become kind of a life's journey now.
It must be quite surreal as well, having fans all over saying that you should do the next feature film.
That's the dream come true, really. You never really think. The pipe dream when you make a fan film is like, ooh, maybe they'll make it good enough so they'd consider me for a real film. Deep down, I'd be lying if I didn't say like, oh, I hope I get someone's eye so I can get a job on the next Friday the 13th film. So I can go out there and I can work on that set. Because that's all I've ever wanted to do. Ultimately, I've always just wanted to be a part of the process. I wanted to be a part of, how the bread is made type thing. Before the next Friday the 13th goes out, get into that development room and be, a whistleblower for the fans, that when a studio head or somebody comes in and starts to talk about Friday the 13th and what they want to do with it, and it's really out of the bounds of what the base fan base would love, have somebody in there and be like, listen, I'm your first line of defense here. You don't want to do that. Like, kind of ruins all this stuff. It doesn't really pay any attention to this, changes the character, or that's not a good design for Jason. That makes him look goofy, or this doesn't make him look scary enough, and things like that. I think that it would definitely benefit the studios to start listening to the fans a little bit more, because it seems that they've been ignoring them pretty hard for a long time. And it's about time that they hire somebody who's a big fan, because I don't think Adam Marcus was a big fan, but he got his hand tied because he told him to take the mask off. But it would be nice if someone who actually knew what they were talking about when it came to Friday the 13th was sitting behind the camera when they yelled action.
What would be one thing you would change about the last Friday the 13th out? I think was 2009.
9.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. One thing, I would change the tone. I think the tone of it is off. I think the tone of it is too nonchalant. It's too paint by numbers. It's too lazy. It's very, I call it Friday the 13th Cliff Notes edition. It's like the entire first 4 films told in small chunks, but just glossed over without really getting underneath the surface. Lots of really great ideas, but aren't executed to their fullest potential. One specific one I would say is the concept of a smart Jason. This Jason who's supposed to be smart and hidden and doing all these things. Well, why is he attacking people in broad daylight? Why is he attacking people who have not wandered onto his property? Why is he going to other people's property in broad daylight and trying to steal things? Feels like these are scenes that should be taking place at night, or they should be taking place in a place where characters are crossing into his territory, not the other way around, and then drawing him out. Sort of what they did in the beginning of the movie, but then wrapping that around to the back end of the movie, so we know that he's been infringed upon rather than him attacking people for no good reason. I felt like it kind of it takes me out of the movie a little bit when it just becomes like kind of a killjoy sequence when there's no real reason for him to do it. I would definitely remove the aspect of the tunnels. I don't think that they add anything to the lore. I don't think that they add anything to like what makes Jason Jason. I think that Camp Crystal Lake is big enough. There are enough buildings. There are enough places where if he chose to, he could hide. And I would have focused on creating some sort of hiding place within the camp, sort of like what we've done in Never Hike Alone. In an attic or in a back room or somewhere where you can't necessarily get to if you don't know where you're going. The concept that he would keep his mother's head in a bathroom above ground while he lived below ground felt false. I don't think that he would be that far away from his head or leave it unguarded. That seemed like a false thing. The other thing that I would have done with this Jason is say, if you're going to make him a human Jason, you've got to change the timeline and you've got to change the type of damage he can take. Because if you want to say he's human and you want him to survive, you cannot give him a killing blow. But you got to do something that's iconic. And I felt that the end of the movie, for what they were trying to establish for this human character, and they really wanted to ground it, they ungrounded it. And they tried to say that he would survive, a machete through his heart, and a head in a wood chipper, and a broken neck. And I was just at some point you just go, it's too much. Like you broke it. You went too far. You didn't pick one thing, and now I don't know what this Jason is, because this is not a person who can survive. He's superhuman or he's supernatural. Definitely the opening of the movie is glossed over about Pamela's story, about what happens there. It's very confusing that Jason is still a little boy at the beginning of the movie, because it's supposed to be 20 years later and they don't really fill in that gap. I thought that was an oversight. And overall, just musically, I felt the tone of the music really didn't feel like Friday the 13th, nor did I think it was a great score in general. I just felt that there was just a lot of lacklusterness. Some of the kills were great. I really love the axe throw kill. Some of the kills in the beginning, chopping that kid right in the head, was a really good one, along with the bear trap, which was really ingenious, like using the traps. I think they probably could have used a little bit more of that. Those were really, really good. And then some of them were a little bit lackluster. Like, I don't know, the screwdriver kill didn't feel great. I mean, it felt like it was supposed to be something, but it didn't really hit it for me. And then, what could have been great was Trent's kill, but it either wasn't lit or it wasn't color corrected to a degree where we could actually see what's going on. And in fact, I didn't know how Trent actually really died until I saw behind the scenes. You could see it lit by cameras that aren't like dialed in with post-production, lighting on it. It was actually just overlit, and you can actually see that he's getting lifted up and sawed in half, which is a really great kill, but you got to shoot it so you can see it.
Yeah.
So I think that it was an effort in the right direction, but the ultimate result of it was huge box office drop-offs, fans not really getting excited and telling people to go there, general audiences not really getting hyped up about it and following through and doing that. It did really well on home video, but it never did well enough for them to really rush another one into production. And so it fell into production hell. And so no matter where you fall on the spectrum of how you feel about 2009, there's something about that movie and there's something about that time period where it fell into a void. And no matter whose desk it went across at Paramount, no matter how many times they changed regimes, there was nobody who was saying that we got to get this movie made, we got to push it out. And ultimately, when their rights ran up, it just they were 4 or 5 concepts deep, and they still couldn't figure out how to bring Jason back. And their ultimate decision on which script out of all of those that they picked, they might have picked the worst one. If you really go back and you look at them, I mean, they really did. They passed up a golden nugget with Bruckner's script, Bruckner and Tosca. That's the movie everybody wanted. That was a movie. That's the Jason we wanted to see come back. But they didn't. They couldn't pull the trigger. So
what was that?
We really missed
about?
That script was about a group of kids working at Camp Crystal Lake many years after the Jason Voorhees story. And it was set in the 80s. It was a period piece. It was supposed to be in 3D. And it's like the last days of camp. They're kind of packing up for the winter and putting everything away. The kids are going home. And a group of counselors on the last night say, what would be really cool? If we took a couple of canoes and went across the lake and saw the old original camp. I heard stories about it. And so knows where it is. We should go check it out. And so they go back to the old camp and they look at it. They walk around for a little bit, don't really find anything, and then walk back to the old camp. But the only problem is they have Jason in tow. So Jason follows them back to their camp, ends up brutally murdering a bunch of them. And the kills were really cool, really unique. The characters were a lot of fun. Eventually the kill sequences lead into town, and it has a really great and brutal ending with Jason jumping out of the back of an ambulance with a bone saw, absolutely just cutting down cops in the middle of the city, or in the middle of town, in the town square. and going after the main characters one last time. It was just like this ultimate like undead Jason from hell, just completely obliterating characters. And it was very simple. It wasn't over the top. And I think what I read was a first draft, and for a first draft, it was amazingly good. And with maybe a little bit of polishing and some cutting, it would have been a really great movie. And ultimately, we never got it.
If you have, like, after you've finished with your Never Hike series and you're going to do another Friday the 13th miniseries, and you had the choice to bring back any 3 people out of the whole franchise, who would you bring back?
I think Ginny would be somebody I'd love to explore some time with. The other one would be Trish, Tommy's sister. I feel like she's got probably a cool story. And believe it or not, I'd love to bring back Reggie the Reckless and have him do a pseudo Jason Lives, but with Roy. So like do a parody of Jason Lives with Reggie the Reckless where he resurrects Roy. And they do like a whole thing, yeah, I mean, I'd love to bring back Kane Hodder as well. I think that bringing back Kane to play a Jason for something, there's a couple ideas that I think he would fit into really, really well. And he could play it's actually a reoccurring role of what he did before, and then something original, which has never been done before. He'd be really cool to work with. And I've also thought about trying to find ways to give other cameos to other people, like Larry Zerner or somebody just, appearing at some point, but not necessarily having a big role, but just kind of passing by or being a townsperson. I think that would be kind of fun.
Have you ever reached out to any of the old Jasons, like CJ or Kane?
I've acted with both CJ and Kane in a film. I met Steve Dash. I haven't met Ted White yet. I haven't met Tom Morga yet. I've met Derek Mears. Derek Mears is very nice. Douglas Tate I've met. And I haven't met Ken Krisinger. I haven't met Glenn. I think it's Glenn Jacobs or Glenn something. He was the guy who did the Firewalk. And I've met Ari Lehman as well. So I've met most of the Jasons. I mean, unfortunately, I'll never get to meet Richard Brooker. That's a bummer. But yeah, no, I think that it's been really cool. And getting to work with Kane and CJ on 13 Fanboy was a lot of fun. They brought me in. I did some consulting on that movie, and then I did some of the stunt work. And so when I was doing the stunt work for the killer character, I got to fight Kane. I got to fight CJ a little bit, stand in and stuff like that. And take all the beating, I guess you could say, and go in there and have to go. But it was cool. I mean, I have only a little stunt experience under my belt. I've done the Never Hike Alone stuff. I've done a couple other things for friends movies, but to actually be on a set where I got to work with Kane and CJ was really, was a great learning lesson for me. And, I had an unbelievable time.
Recently, there was a new Friday the 13th box set released. Did you have any part in it?
I didn't have any part in it, but I do have it. No, I didn't have any part of it. I reached out too late to see if I could get Never Hike Alone into it. I didn't even know they were taking open submissions, but apparently they were, and I missed the boat, but it's fine. Apparently Tom and Vinny talk about Never Hike Alone and Never Hike in the Snow on the Part 6 commentary that they did with CJ, Cindy, and I can't remember the name of the actress who played the redheaded counselor. But the 5 of them do a commentary track, which is really good and really funny. And you can hear like them kind of recanting all the old stories from set. So it's pretty cool. It's a good track. And then Tom and Vinny kind of mention what we've been up to towards the end of the film.
I recently got the 10. The 10 collection that came out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I recently got that. And then as soon as I got that, they brought out the deluxe one.
That's funny. Yeah, I have that one too. I got that one when it first came out. And did I win that? I think I won that, actually. I won it at a Friday the 13th marathon screening. We watched, I think, every single Friday the 13th, 1 through 8, overnight. It was a long time. And they did a trivia, and I won that in a trivia.
That must have been very tiring.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was definitely tiring. I think I fell asleep a couple times, But winning that box set, I mean, when you look back on it, how much it cost, I was like, thank God. I was like, good. Oh God, I didn't want to pay for this. Like at the time, I was so broke. I was just like, I'll never be able to afford that. But now I have that, and I have my new box set now. I think they did, I mean, an unbelievable job on this thing. I know some people have trouble, but I lucked out. I got one of the good ones, so I got no complaints.
Speaking of box sets, will there be a Never Hike Alone box set, or what's the release going to be overall once it's complete?
I mean, we're going to look at what's the best way to release it to everybody. We're doing it one at a time, obviously, because that helps us fundraise. It's an expensive process to do the Blu-rays. If we could convince people to wait till the end and just please keep donating until then, without it, it would be a huge help. But we know that they need the incentive. They want the pieces. Each individual one will come with its own thing. We're working on the Never Hike Alone stuff right now. I mean, Never Hike in the Snow things right now. But at the end of the day, we got 3 more episodes coming out. That means we'll have 5 discs. And if we can consolidate to less discs to do a box set towards the end with additional stuff on it, it might work. Or maybe if we have our 5 Blu-rays, then we can just create something that holds them, like a nice holder for them or something like that. So we're going to look into see what's the most cost effective and we just don't like to make fans double dip. You know what I mean? Like they already do it already, and we really do appreciate that. But for the most part, we want to make this as cost effective for everybody. We don't want it to be expensive for fans. We don't want it to be expensive for us, but we want them to have cool things. We want it to look good on the shelf. We want them to have the incentive to get our discs and add them to their Friday the 13th collection. So they feel like they have that extension of the story that they've always had, but they're getting that cool collectible that reminds them that they participated in something, that they were a part of something that is all fan driven. It's all fan funded. It's all fan made. And it's become a phenomenon now. You know what I mean? It's like, it's really interesting to see how, in the absence of the studios stepping in and, kind of the result of this lawsuit extending this issue, how fans have stepped up and really made it a point to show the studios that we still want Friday the 13th, and that if we got to make it ourselves, we'll make it ourselves, and we'll entertain ourselves until the powers that be figure it out and try to take their crack at it. And it's going to be interesting to see after all these fan films what direction they take with a Friday the 13th, and if they're going to be able to outmatch us even though we're like a 20th of their budget.
It's going to be hard.
Well, I hope for the sake of Friday the 13th fans that they figure out a way to do it.
Another question just regarding the Never Hike series. Are the next entries a dead cert, or does it all still depend on fan funding?
It's fan funding. So each one will have its own crowdfunding. We basically took a feature film script, which is Never Hike Alone 2, as one story. We looked at that. It was hundreds of thousands of dollars. We were going to get it mine produced out and stuff like that. It was looking like it was going to be really, really expensive. So we looked at it as a way of if we can continue this momentum of building a fan base, we can use Never Hike in the Snow to fix our logistical issues that we were having before. And by the time we get through Never Hike in the Snow, we'll have a bigger fan base that will start being able to afford these bigger episodes, these, big locations and things that we have to go get. And now we feel confident that, with going from 277 backers to 2,461 backers between 2 projects, that we can continue that uptick, which only means that more people will keep donating. It will create bigger budgets for us. And then we can really kind of go, all right, next episode, this one costs that much, then we're looking to raise this much. But if there's enough fans there and we say the next episode we were going to do later on, but if you can raise all the money for it now, we'll shoot both at the same time. So we have to figure out kind of a deal with the fans to say, listen, we love you guys, but you got to go out and you got to get more people. If you don't want to wait a year, if you don't want to have that feeling at the end of Never Hike in the Snow where you go where's the next one, then we need to be able to make multiple at a time and feed that need. We definitely wouldn't be able to make the final episode with the other 2 because that's going to be its own really expensive budget. There's some logistical things that we need to figure out VFX wise. How are we going to pull off some of the things that we want to do to make sure that we don't under deliver on what we want to do. So that one has to really kind of be locked out, and that will definitely be a year away from whatever we do next. But it's just going to determine if next spring, in about March of 2021, as long as everything's looking good and we'll have a summer that we can film, we're definitely going to be looking to try to get both episodes done back to back, and then we'll release them on a nice schedule that maybe we can edit the first one, get that one done and get it out, and then edit the second one while the other one's already out, and then get that out like a month or two later. I think fans will really enjoy that, have something to look forward to, and then carry us on to the final episode, where by then, hopefully we're looking at like 5,000-10,000 fans that will be backing us. And hopefully that turns into, everything we need for a budget, everything we need for perk fulfillment. So if we're doing that Blu-ray or that box set or whatever we're going to do for the fans, that everything's covered, and then we wrap up the whole series in a bow, send it out to everybody, and we move on to the next thing.
Have you tried, you probably thought of every idea in the book, but maybe sending screeners, well, not screeners because they're already out, like your videos over to like NECA Toys? Maybe they could do some backing, because they seem to be huge Friday fans.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. It's always a legal issue anytime we try to go out to like official things. But once I think the rights settle and we see if we have any momentum or clout with the studios, that we'd like to approach them and say, listen, why don't you adopt Never Hike Alone? Why don't you take this Ghost Jason character? Why don't you take some of these characters and these things that we're doing, and let's put them into the mainstream, and let's make it available. Why am I only printing 1,000 Blu-rays, or why am I only printing 2,000 Blu-rays, when there's hundreds of thousands or millions of Friday the 13th fans around the world, that if you put your symbol of approval on this, if you make this an official Friday the 13th film, that they'll give it a shot finally. There's still a lot of people out there who just hear fan film and just say no. They won't even give it a chance. And it's been a 3-year struggle to really grow that. We, like I said, we went from 277 people to 2,461. That's great progress in 2 years. Well, now we got a year to make that even bigger. But we know there's more than 2,461 Friday the 13th fans in this world. Yeah. A lot more. And if all of those Friday the 13th fans showed up and they gave us $5 just to get their name in the credits, we'll have 20-minute long credits, but we'll also have all the money we need. And everybody will just have to give us $5, and we won't have to print a thing. And then we can just print one big thing at the end and make it easy. And that's ultimately what we want to do. We don't want to put the burden on the fan too much. We want a big collection of fans to rally behind this and really be this. I mean, it's a fan love letter to this series. Can you imagine a disc with, tens of thousands of people on it, who have all contributed to this story to kind of carry on and get the closure with Jason that we've always wanted. And if they believe in it and we're able to deliver on, what we say we're trying to deliver, that, Friday the 13th fans might get something from out of the series that they probably really haven't gotten so far.
I'm sure as well, in between trying to get these films set up, you work a day-to-day job as well. So trying to get everyone together at the same time is bound to be a bit of an issue.
Oh, it's a pain. It's really hard, especially in LA, because there's not really a lot of places where you can gather in large gatherings. It's like you're in your apartment, you got 20 people crammed in here. There's only so many seats. But I mean, we all stay in touch. I mean, everyone's an email away. We have our email list. It's usually me, Kyle McCall. It's usually me, Kyle Klein, and Kara Michelati, who's our two producers. We get together, we hash everything out here or around town. And then once we have all of our logistics figured out, we wrangle everybody up. We bring our department heads together. It's pretty simple for us to get there. And then, it's about the schedule. That's why we try to schedule as far out as possible. We start throwing dates out to people, seeing where everybody's available. I mean, it's the typical stuff. It's not too bad. This production is large, but it's not any larger than what we deal with when we shoot commercials or I mean, not even close to what we do when I work on TV sets and stuff like that. But Kara, Kyle, and I do a lot of commercial production. We work on small teams that do photo shoots and, car commercials and other things like that. And, you know, we're working on crews of 20 to 40 people. And so Never Hike Alone kind of falls into the same range, 20 to 40. Usually we're closer to 20. And, you know, we're able to pull those resources together. And while we're out on these other sets, recruit for additional talent to help us get these films done.
Do you find it hard gathering the materials for the Never Hike series?
I mean, yeah, it's a progress, you know, each prop, each location, each wardrobe piece, each, you know, weapon, each thing, each is its own set of hours and hours of research, whether it's buying the proper machete or whether it's finding the right place to shoot. You know, when we were looking for Diana Hill's house, you know, that took a while to find the house that we wanted. You know, casting, you know, trying to find Diana Hill herself, like, was really tough. It was trying to see like who would look like Cortland and who would actually be able to pull off this role of like true emotion. This is going to be really tough. And so you just kind of have to take each asset, each thing one at a time and kind of fill in the gaps. But luckily, a lot of things for us, when we need props, when we need locations, when we need those things, we have resources. And so there's ways to tap into those resources and see what we can get and turn it up. It's just about sitting through and figuring out which one we want.
The opening kill of Never Hike in the Snow, that was badass. That was amazing.
Thank you.
And it was disturbing. Like, even after you've seen it, you'd be like making a cup of coffee or whatever, and then that would just pop into your head. That must have took some planning.
Took a lot of planning. The whole short is planned around that kill. I mean, that was the first idea I had in my head, and I wanted to build it off that situation. And so, our first visual effects artist, Kelsey Burke, who worked on Never Hike Alone, after Never Hike Alone, her career took off. I mean, it wasn't necessarily Never Hike Alone got her on that career, but she's just really good. She got recognized while she was out on set for stuff that she was doing for other bigger films, and she's just been doing really, really well ever since. So we ended up making really good friends with Nora Hewitt, who was a participant on Face Off, and actually won season 9 of that. She's a student of the Tom Savini design school. I worked with her on 13 Fanboy. That's where I met her. And we worked on some stuff together out there, and I pitched her the Never Hike series, and she joined in. And I told her about this kill, and she thought it was awesome. We collaborated with another artist by the name of Bill Hunt, who's based out of New Zealand. He's actually an American visual effects artist who started working in the 90s. He worked on Jason Goes to Hell. He's one of the FX artists on that. Eventually worked on a ton of other movies and went to New Zealand to work on Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. And then off of those movies, basically made his living and now lives out there full time and has no desire to come back to the States. I can't imagine why. And so between Bill's designs, Nora's, work, her and her fiance, Rachel, worked on all those prosthetics and things together. It was a lot. I mean, there was the mouth appliance, there was blood rig, there was the axe itself, which was designed and made by Horror Effects Designs. They made that, like, the handle for that was like a wiffle ball bat. It was like really, really light. Do you know what a wiffle ball bat is?
No.
All right, so we have a game here which is basically like baseball. Like, you throw like a white ball, it's got holes in it, it's plastic, and it's a thin yellow bat. And so it's just like light plastic. It's just a toy that kids use. And usually axes have like really heavy handles. So we had something so light, so when we put the axe in Cortland's mouth and it had the mouthpiece in it, he could bite on it and the axe wouldn't bend. It would stay upright as if it was really planted into his jawline. And yeah, so we had like the tubes running out of the mouth, so blood would run down his mouth and blood would squirt out from like kind of behind where like he was trying to breathe out the side holes and stuff like that. So that was really cool. Yeah, and it took 2 hours, I think, to get him into that makeup and set him up and lay him down, get him surrounded by snow and bury him in and level it all out. It was quite the undertaking.
Was it real snow?
It was all real snow. We were battling the sun, so some of it was starting to melt. So the PAs were piling up snow in the shade, so we could just save it. Like, we were out in the parking lot, right there. And so there was snow across like the way where we weren't shooting. So they were shoveling snow into buckets, bringing it over to another part of the parking lot, piling it up so it was in the shade and the sun wasn't hitting it. And then when it was time to shoot, we were shoveling in buckets of snow and surrounding the set where the snow is starting to melt. So that way, when we panned up, we weren't catching any of the bare ground. We basically, everything that's on frame, we hand packed to the snow, and everything that's off frame is like bare, because it melted that fast. The storm came and the storm went, and then the sun came out and it melted. And it was really hard. We experienced a really hard drought last year. We only had 3 or 4 snowstorms. We caught 2 of them, actually 3 of them. 2 the first weekend and 1 the second weekend. And that really helped us out, get our snow there, because other than that, Big Bear in the mountain area where we were filming, where it's usually covered in snow that year, it was nothing. I mean, when we pulled up there that first night, there was no snow. And we had to get up at like 4 a.m. to catch the first snowstorm, get all the opening of the film shots. And then the sun came out, melted everything, waited for a second storm to come. And the second storm came and we shot all the bow and arrow sequence stuff. And then we got another kind of dumping that night. Shot all the stuff with the cops outside the camp, with them having their argument. And then the next day we got to camp early again to pick up some of the stuff that we were doing, and finish the axe kill. And that's when we were racing the sun, so we wouldn't lose the snow that we had got the day before. And basically by the time we wrapped on Monday, and we were driving home, all the snow was melted.
What would Tom's availability be like?
Tom's basically available when we need him. He runs his own company. And when we need him, we basically just work around his convention schedule. So as long as he is, available, we do it. And we only need him we try to shoot him out pretty quick. That way we prioritize him, get all his stuff done, and then move on to the next stuff. And that's basically what we did with this. He was there the first 2 weekends. We had Vinny shut up by the second weekend, and then we finished with Mark and Mabry on the third weekend, going out to Arizona and shooting all the stuff in the attic, and then the searching of the camp.
And then after Never Hike in the Snow, maybe a month after, maybe, or a couple of weeks, I don't know, my daisies. This weather is just all in one. But I've seen your name attached to a Halloween fan film.
Mm-hmm.
So I checked it out. Were you playing Michael?
Yeah, that's me playing Michael.
How do you play serial killers so good?
I mean, I watch a lot of horror movies, and I really care. I think that's the two, the secret ingredients is that too. And it was literally 3 days later, we released Never Hike in the Snow on the 13th, and then Happy Halloween came out on October 16th in place of Halloween Kills, which is what we did 3 years prior in 2017 when Friday the 13th was supposed to come out that year. We released Never Hike Alone as kind of a, well, if you're not going to do it, we'll do it type thing. So yeah, Jimmy and Cortland made that movie. They asked me to be Michael in it. We flew to Michigan and made it there over the course of 4 freezing cold nights. And it was a lot of fun. I mean, it was just that was one of the first times I've actually just been able to go out and just start brutally murdering people one after the other. Because everything I do is so nuanced, and I build up to all my stuff. And this was really just like a kill sequence. So it was a lot of fun. I actually learned some things I want to take into account when I do Never Hike Alone stuff, to be like, okay, if you guys can make it look this good for this cheap, then I'm going to try to do that when I need to do big sequences. And that way I can do one big thing, like 2 cheaps and then a big, and we'll see how to do it since you guys seem to figure it out. So Cortland and Ryan, even though Cortland's dead now, they're definitely going to be helping us out with future films and helping us get some of this effects for the film, so we don't have to, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on this, that we can actually find some cheats that look good and fans will appreciate.
You've definitely cemented yourself as a true master at what you do. So what other serial killers or horror icons would you want to take on? Because the fans are probably just going to they'll be like, Leatherface. Someone has to do something decent with Leatherface, and I'm sure you are the man for it.
I was pitched something for a Leatherface fan film. Not that I would direct it, but they actually asked me to play Leatherface. I can't say what it is. And I if it all comes together, I'll definitely do it. I think that would be fun. I'm gonna have to do a little bit of studying into that character to figure out how I would do it and understand the, I don't know, just kind of understand a little bit more about how they did it back in the day. Um, and then other than that, I've always wanted to do more creature work. I would love to play a predator, or I would love to play, I'd love to be a man in suit Godzilla actor. I think that would be fun.
That'd be
You know,
cool.
all this stuff. Yeah, I mean, I'd take any challenge really. Yeah, and more acting, I think, in my future, and kind of doing things like that. I'm definitely looking forward to it. But yeah, I mean, if they're ever looking for a brand new murderer, or they want me to come in and be James Hughes Courtney's stunt double, then I'm all for it.
You've definitely done a really good job of playing Michael. But as soon as I seen you bashing the dude's head off the grave, I was like, I recognize him.
So I mean, yeah, and that's Ryan. I'm bouncing Ryan Becker's head off that thing. He's the cohort of Cortland who works for Odyssey the Odd. But the funny thing is, we were shooting at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I accidentally bounced his head off that tombstone at one point. He really, I mean, Ryan was selling it. I was throwing him down, and I was really tired, and he threw himself forward one time, and I kind of threw him forward at the same time and lost my balance a little bit. We both tipped forward just enough where the tip of the mast just went like whack right on the gravestone. I went, oh. And I was like, oh, you're okay. And it's so funny because like here I am smashing him, and then they were like, I think you just hit his head on that thing, and like you pull him up. I'm like, are you okay, Ryan? And he's like, I'm fine. All right, keep going. Wow. Smash his face. But they're so they're much younger than me, so they have a lot more energy. But they're really fun to be around and work with. I really like working with those guys.
The opening of that was really brutal as well.
Yeah, when they pitched it to me, I was like, wait, so I get to kill a kid? I was like, all right. I was like, this is brutal. I love it. Like, I'm going to kill 2 kids in 1 week. And we even went out earlier that week, like literally 2 nights before the release of Never Hike Alone. I was like, I mean, Never Hike Alone, I was really like kind of like just antsy. And Cortland wanted to make this thing. So we went up to the college camp where we shoot our films, and we filmed a like first person, like cell phone video of these kids searching Camp Crystal Lake and eventually getting caught by Jason and one by one systematically murdered. So I killed about 13 people in the span of a week, which was, I don't know, it was a good, like, considering all the studios just backed out of making anything this year or releasing anything this year, for us to come out and release 3 different projects in 1 week, in the heart of Halloween season, I think that was pretty cool for a group of independent filmmakers to do.
One of my final questions for you is, well, you got the box set next year, actually, so it won't be hard at all. Rank the Friday the 13th films in order.
Oh, in complete order? 6, 4, 2. Then I would have to go 6, 4, 2, 1, 5, 8, 7, X Goes to Hell, Freddy versus Jason, and then make sure I'm not missing, but then 2009. 2009's at the bottom with Freddy versus Jason right above that, and then Jason Goes to Hell. Those are the bottom 3, and then the top 3 are 6, 4, 2.
Did you like the mask in Jason X? Like at the beginning?
No, I mean, Jason looks really goofy in that movie. The whole movie's goofy, but I mean, it's funny, like, even though Jason X is 4th from the bottom on my list, or no, it's about 4th from the bottom of my list, I still really like that movie. Everything above that, I really like. And I could almost say you can almost take Part 7 and put that below Jason X. Like, I could almost go 8, Jason X Part 7. Only because Part 7 is one of those movies that's built around characters that, like, you don't want to like them. And I feel like Kane's performance as Jason is almost better in Part 8 than it is in Part 7. And I like the pre-unmasking Jason look better in Part 8 than I do in Part 7. Yeah. So it's kind of preferences there. I know that 7 is high on most people's lists. Like, 7's like, I think, 3rd for the one that people like the most. It's usually like 6 and 4. And then 7 and 3 get their just due. I think those are kind of the 2. The 4 probably top 4, I think, as far as like other fans go. Oh, I think I didn't put 3 on the list, so it would go 1, 5, 3. I actually like uh, New Beginning more than the 3D version. I feel like Steve Miner, as it goes, directing parts 2 and part 3. Part 2 is his strong film, and part 3 is a little weak. It's too brightly lit. There's no rain. It's just all wind the entire time. So it really didn't. I do appreciate the long Chris Higgins chase at the end, but Chris as a final girl, I feel like she's not as strong as, say, Tommy in part 5. And I'm a bigger fan of Ginny in part 2. And then, part 1, I feel like I had my respect for it, and Betsy Palmer and the way that it kicks everything off. I feel like it has, out of the first 5 films are really the same film. I would say that in the strongest being made, that one is a little bit stronger than 3 and 5. But you could say that 5 is actually a stronger film than 1, because it does one thing that 1 doesn't, which is set up the killer at the beginning of the movie, which is like the biggest mistake that 1 makes is that if it's supposed to be modeled after a giallo, it's supposed to set up the character in which, is going to be the killer at the end. And they don't do the red herring stuff. They don't present a bunch of people that it could be and then pick one of them. It just cheats and has somebody show up at the end off of an offshoot line at the beginning of the movie about the kid who drowned. So it's a little bit of a cheat, and 5 actually executes it a little bit better. But as far as quality of film made, 1 is a better quality film as filmmaking, and 5 is just like one of the funnest films in the franchise.
Reggie's scream sells it for me every time.
It's great.
Would the telekinesis part from part 7, would you ever want to feature that in a series?
I kind of have this thing where it's not my thing, but I have a story in which Tina could come back, which I think is cool for those fans. I think that's one of those things where I'd be a producer on one of those. And I would say, hey, I got this idea. What if this happened and this happened? And this is Tina's thing. And I had the luxury of talking to Jean-Carl Buechler before he died. I had a really great conversation with him, about an hour on the phone, and we talked about our films. Told me about New Blood, some of the things that kind of happened, and then he told me about what he wanted to do for Friday the 13th, Part 7, Volume 2, which I thought was very brilliant, and I was really excited about hearing what he had in store for Jason, the type of Jason that he wanted to build. And so I think that if there is a student of John Carl Buechler type director who's like, oh, those are the types of movies I love, those are the types of movies I'd want to make, sort of the visual effects artist director type person, I would want to hire them and say, this is what John wanted to do. Here's a good story for you. Here's some characters you could use. Obviously bring Tina back. And then here's a cool story to follow. And so, even though it's not my personal favorite, I do recognize that people love it, and I would love to help them. I want to help Friday the 13th fans get the movies they've always wanted to see made. Every time the studio has said no, I want to be the guy who says, yes, we can do that. We can make it awesome. You know what I mean? Because there is really like, there is right and wrong in Friday the 13th to a certain degree, but at the same time, there is this levity to it that you're like, you really can't make the biggest mistake. Even when you screw up big time, it still creates its own fan base. Yeah. So it's definitely something worth pursuing.
And my final question for you would be your top favorite, well, your top 3 favorite kills in the whole franchise.
Oh, well, my top one is Mark on part 2, getting the machete to the face and rolling backwards down the stairs. There's something about that kill that always really got to me. Sheriff Garris getting bent backwards in part 6, that one always really, really got to me. And then Julius getting his head punched off in 8. I think that one was like, and in fact, if you look closely at Never Hike in the Snow, when Mom leans against the refrigerator, it says, take your best shot. And that's a call out to Julius. And we just repurpose it like he's taking a camera shot, but that's a part 8 reference. So I got to give credit to Christian Asensio, who's one of our PAs who came up with that. He's the one who put that on the fridge. It was a brilliant move.
Well, you mentioned earlier about the hockey masks, actually, in the cabinet. The one that he picks up is it looked like the one from Part 5.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily Roy's mask. It's just it's a box of masks that all have different chevron patterns. And so we wanted to show that these masks exist in this world and that there's more of them. And maybe other people can tell other stories. Maybe there's something going on there. But I mean, mostly that pile of masks plays a role in a previous episode that hopefully we get to make one day, like after all this is done. And you'll see like how it ended up where it ended up.
And another homage I noticed as well was in Halloween in the house. If you look closely, there's a Jason costume in the back left corner.
Yep. Yeah, they were trying to slip as many Easter eggs in there as possible. I know Jimmy is a huge Halloween fan, so that was sort of his mission was to really pay homage to things, put things in the background, make it fun for the audience to watch. I mean, obviously we're fans, so when we make these things, we know real fans are watching and we know that you're paying attention. So we like to leave things in the frame for you to see it and go, oh, I paid attention. I was rewarded because I saw something really cool, and that makes me like this movie a little bit more. It gives me something else to do than just watch the movie. I get to really be a part of it, and I think that that's a really important thing when you're making a fan film, is to really, they call it fan service, but I think to some degree you gotta give the fans what they want.
Well, that's my questions all wrapped.
Great questions.
Thank you.
I appreciate them. They were really great questions. I really enjoyed them.
I had a really good time too. Thanks, man. And big favor, just keep everyone updated of when the next Never Hike will the campaign will drop, and then I'm sure we can get a load more hits on it.
Yeah, no, totally. We're going to be aiming for March 2021. If everybody follows us at youtube.com/WompStompFilms, if you subscribe, that's WOMPSTOMPFILMS. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. We'll be posting through all of those mediums. Instagram is probably where we're most active most of the time. We've been a little bit more active on Twitter lately. So if you want to ask us questions or anything like that, or you can email us at wompstompfilms@gmail.com. If you want to do that, we have something going on right now called Never Hike in the Snow, The Final Call. It's an in-demand Indiegogo campaign. That's basically, we have about, I think, 200 more Blu-rays that we can sell if people want to get the first edition, because we're going to print 2,500. And we're up to 2,300 right now. So we're going to maybe let it go for a little bit longer, and then we're going to shut it down. So if fans want to do that, look for Indiegogo, Never Hike in the Snow, The Final Call. We have Blu-rays for Never Hike in the Snow. We have some reprints for Never Hike Alone. We have some pins, some posters, some other cool things out there. We did some new COVID masks, which are really cool. So you can get ready for the winter season when they start shutting stuff down again. You can definitely rep the film and rep Ghost Jason with a really cool looking mask.
Thanks very much for your time. And as you mentioned that, I think I might pop on over and try and get myself a copy of Never Hike in the Snow.
Cool. Yeah, definitely do it. They're $20. Unfortunately, international shipping, it gets kind of expensive. It's really expensive to ship international out here. It's like an additional $15. So we do apologize to anyone who is around the world and has to get it. I'm sorry. I wish we could take on that cost, but then we'd basically be losing money on the discs. But they're real cool. The discs are coming with a lot of stuff. So Never Hike in the Snow is on it. There's going to be behind the scenes. We're going to put our original film, Pathosis, which will be actually debuting on our YouTube channel this Friday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time out here. So that will be on there. Another film that I directed called Imagine will be on there. Behind the scenes commentary. We have a blooper reel. We have an episode of Kyle MacLeod's Trail Junkies, which is really fun. It's really cool that the episode that Mark was watching in Never Hike in the Snow, that's up on the screen when she opens up the computer, it's that episode. So you're going to be able to see that on your disc as a bonus thing. We're going to have French subtitles, Spanish subtitles, Portuguese subtitles, Italian subtitles, German subtitles, English subtitles, and anything more that we can get our hands on. We've been reaching out, trying to get as many languages as possible. Somebody's asked us if we could do Klingon. We'll do that too. Who knows? But we have just a lot of really great stuff for everybody. something called Blood in the Snow. It's going to be our art gallery. So all of Bill Hunt's concept art is going to be released and shown, which will be really cool. I think fans will really get a kick out of that, being able to see his art, and some of the behind the scenes other artwork that we did between myself, Nora, other artists, and other things who pitched in. I think there's a really cool batch of artwork that fans will really want to get a look at.
That sounds awesome. You definitely sold it anyway.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for your time, and I do look forward to the next entry, and keep up the good work.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No worries. My pleasure. See you later.
See you, bye.